4 years ago, I took my very first sales call as a high ticket closer. Fast forward just 4 years later, and I've now contributed over $10 million in high ticket deals, both through my own production and the teams I've trained. And if I've learned one thing, it's this: your process for how you approach high ticket sales calls matters. Most gurus teach tactics that do nothing except for leave you more confused than you were when you started. But over the years, I've been using one simple system to consistently close deals. And in this video, I'm giving you exactly that, the exact system behind how I approach every single high ticket sales call. This is the same framework that's helped me generate millions of dollars in deals, and the one that I teach to my students that allows them to start getting real results from day one. So if you want to become a top 1% high ticket closer in 2026, grab a pen and a pad, lock in, and take some notes. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand the exact 5-step process you can use to start closing more deals immediately. Let's go ahead and dive in. Now, before I walk you through the 5-step process and we get into the tactics and the skills, there's one very, very important thing we need to cover, because if there's anything that I see holds high ticket closers back from reaching their full potential more than anything else, it's this. And probably the best way for me to actually demonstrate what this lesson is would be to just tell you my own personal journey and experience with this. So I'll take you back to 2022 when I first got into high ticket sales. I obviously wanted the dream life. I wanted to hit those $20, $30, $40, $50,000 months in high ticket sales. And I quickly was able to get to 10, 20K, but those 50K months that everybody talks about seem very elusive. I couldn't figure out how to just break through. And I'll never forget when one of my sales mentors one day pointed out this fact that shifted my perspective forever. He sat me down and he asked me, he said, what's your routine like? Tell me, what time do you wake up? How's your relationship? Do you keep your word to yourself? And overall, if you had to assess your life outside of sales and business, what would you rate it out of 10? And that was the first time that I really put two and two together, that who you are is going to be the great determining factor of your success as a high ticket closer. You see, what most average high ticket closers completely misunderstand is they think that success and their next level is going to come down to the very next tactic they pick up, the next word track or objection handling technique or something like that. But here's the reality, okay? You'll never out earn who you are as a closer. You see, when you're hopping on high ticket sales calls, selling coaching and consulting packages to people and trying to help them overcome their own limiting beliefs, you can only do that to the degree that you have congruency inside yourself. So if you try to become a high ticket closer selling a fitness program or a program that helps people level up in business or fixes their marriage or improves their life or anything like that, but you're the type of person that doesn't stick to your word and you don't have great relationships and your life outside of work and sales isn't on fire, you're incongruent and people can feel it. You see, people have a BS meter, and if you're not the person that you claim to be, it's communicated to your prospects and they can feel it, and therefore they won't have the conviction that this is the thing and now is the time. So the first thing you need to learn if you really want to master high ticket sales is this simple fact: your paycheck will always come down to the level of personal development that you have. So all the tactics in the world, they're great, and you should always be learning and improving your game. But at the end of the day, the most important lever that you could pull to become a great sales rep and a great high ticket closer is developing yourself and investing into yourself. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let me go ahead and get into walking you through my exact 5-step process for closing high ticket sales. So the first step of my high ticket sales process is actually going to be the introduction. Now, before I get into telling you exactly how you should handle an introduction in high ticket sales, let me quickly explain to you some of the biggest mistakes I see closers make that cost them deals all the time. So the first thing is going to be building too much rapport. You see, when you take a call and you hop on with a prospect in high ticket sales, they are there because they are looking for guidance. And they're looking to you as the authority and the expert at the subject matter you guys are discussing to guide them and help them make the right decision that's going to get them to their goals, right? And if you hop on and you immediately start getting into rapport about how's the weather, do you see what your favorite sports team did last night, and other things like this that are completely irrelevant to the sale, it immediately starts to lower your status. And the best example I could give you here would be this. If you go to a doctor's office, you go into a doctor's office, you wait in the lobby, the nurse comes in, takes you to the back office, takes you to the doc's office, grabs some pre-screening information, and then the doctor walks in. Now, you've had to go through a lot of frictions just to be able to sit down with that doctor. So whenever he walks into the room, you put your phone down and you're attentive. You listen to exactly what he says because you had to put in a lot of effort just to make it to that point. So you value his time. But imagine if the doctor walked into the room and immediately just started cracking jokes and had a pointless conversation with you about a bunch of different random small talk topics for the first 10 minutes you guys were together. It would immediately lower his status in your eyes, and make you question if you're actually sitting down with the right person. So that's exactly how you got to think about yourself when you show up on a high ticket sales call. You are the doctor there to prescribe your patient with the right solution for them and help them truly determine if this is the thing and now's the time. So there should be no small talk. You should jump right into business. Now, as far as things you're going to want to knock off the list in your intro, it's simple. You're going to want to hop on and greet the prospect first, let them know you're a human being. Secondly, you're going to check and make sure that they're in a buying state. Now, this is another mistake that I see a lot of closers make, where if a prospect hops on a meeting and they're in a car driving down the road, or there's kids in the background screaming, or they're maybe out on a walk and they're on their phone, a lot of closers, because they're needy for deals, they'll continue on with the sales call. But the smartest closers know that you never take a sales call with a prospect outside of buying state. So what does buying state look like really? Well, if a prospect's in buying state, they should be sitting down on a computer, attentive, locked in, no distractions, and perfectly attentive to what you're about to talk about, okay? Now, the reason you want to do this is simple. It's because if you take a call with a prospect who's distracted and not in buying state, they're not going to be as serious or give you those below the surface answers that you need in order to emotionally move them to take action. So my number one rule, and the first thing I do before I even proceed with the high ticket sales call, aside from just greeting the prospect and stuff like that, is making sure they're in buying state, making sure they still have the full calendar slot blocked off and available where they can be distraction free, and that they're completely locked in and attentive to the conversation that we're about to have. And the last thing I'm going to do when it comes to the intro in a high ticket sales call is simple, and that is setting the frame. Now, this is the part of a sales call in the intro where a lot of people will get very robotic. They sound scripted, they sound robotic, but a high ticket sales call and setting the frame in the intro is really simple. It's essentially like this. Hey, so essentially the way these calls typically go is I just want to get a little bit more information on where you're at currently, where you want to go. And at the end of the call, if I feel like we can help, I'll walk you through exactly what that would look like. Does that sound good? And you just want to get an agreement. And a lot of closers debate on whether or not setting a frame is actually a good idea at the beginning of your sales call or not. I would argue that it's the right thing to do because a lot of prospects come onto the call not really clear on exactly what's about to take place. And anytime you're having a meeting that's at all important, it's always best to set the agenda for what's about to happen. So when a prospect hops on after you've greeted them, made sure they're in buying state and they've still got time available to talk to you, the last thing you're going to do is simply set the agenda, and this locks them in and lets them know exactly what's about to take place for the rest of the call. After completing these simple steps, you've now made it through the intro, and we're moving on to step 2. All right, guys, we are now on to step 2, and right now you're really going to want to lock in because what I'm about to walk you through is by far the most important step of the entire high ticket sales process. And it took me a while to learn this. It was actually probably the biggest breakthrough I ever had as a high ticket closer in my career. And it's also one of the biggest misconceptions that average high ticket closers have when it comes to this industry. And that is this. See, most high ticket closers think that the most important part of the sales process is objection handling. Getting good at overcoming objections when you're at the very end of the call, when the prospect tells you no, or they want to wait, or they want to think about it, and being able to overcome those objections and close the prospect. But I'm here to tell you today that there's a skill that's far more important than objections. And if it's done properly as a high ticket closer, will actually prevent you from getting most objections at all. Now that skill is very simple. It's one thing, and it's called discovery. And that's exactly what step 2 of the high ticket sales process is. You see, discovery in your high ticket sales calls is the most important part of the high ticket sales call. And that's for a couple reasons. Number one is because that's where you're building the gap. Okay. See, all prospects that come to you, they have 2 states in their mind. They have their current state, which is their current challenges and their problems and their pain points. And then they have their desired state, which is where they want to be, their future goals, dreams, hopes, and their vision, right? And they have a feeling that your product could be the answer that is going to take them from current state to desired state. And the way that you as a high ticket sales pro are going to, one, get the prospect to understand that this is the thing and now is the time, and two, create urgency and eliminate any potential objections is by running a very thorough discovery. Now, most sales trainers make the process of discovery on a high ticket sales call way more complicated than it needs to be. And I'll probably publish a future video where I'll walk you through my entire discovery process because it deserves a video on its own. But for the sake of explaining exactly what you want to accomplish during discovery on a sales call, here are the 4 things I always make sure to answer during my discoveries that always leads to closes in high ticket sales. Number 1 is going to be figuring out what the prospect's current problems are and what their pain points are. Number 2 is going to be figuring out what's prevented the prospect from getting help prior to today and helping them figure out what the limiting beliefs are that have held them back. Number 3 is going to be figuring out what the prospect's vision is. What does success look like once they solve their problem and they get to where they want to go? And the last one's going to be consequences. What's at stake if the prospect does nothing, doesn't take action, doesn't find a solution, and stays where they're at and is stuck there for the next couple years? Simply by gathering the answer to these 4 questions on your high ticket sales calls will dramatically boost your close rate. See, the problem I see with most high ticket closers is that they're too surface level in their discovery. They don't probe for the real answers. They ask surface level questions so they get surface level answers. But by focusing on getting these 4 outcomes in your discovery, you can have a natural conversation, ask the prospect real questions to get you real answers, and open them up so that way they're primed to want to buy your product at the end of discovery. A successful discovery in high ticket sales will lead to the prospect having more trust in you as the guide and the authority on the call, having less objections at the end of your sales calls, and overall having more confidence in your abilities as a closer because you do a proper diagnosis. And you see, before we move on to the next steps in the process, one important thing you need to understand when it comes to discovery on the high ticket sales call. And that is this. It all goes back to the same thing I talked about in step 1, which is the doctor frame. You see, if you were to go to a doctor and tell them you have heartburn or you have pain in your chest, right? Well, if the doctor immediately came out and said, hey, you need heart surgery, let's go ahead and get you on the table, let's get you signed up. Imagine what your reaction would be like. I don't know about you, but I would be like, dude, I'm not getting on that table. I'm pretty sure that's not what I need right now. And you didn't properly assess what exactly is wrong with me, right? And that's exactly how your prospects feel when you hop on the sales call, ask them a couple surface level questions, and then try to pitch your product and shove it down their throat. You see, when you do a great discovery, you go really deep into the prospect's current situation or where they want to be. And by the end of your discovery, they should feel like you fully understand exactly where they're at. And then you have a lot more confidence going into the pitch and they have more confidence that you know exactly what they need. As I said before, I'll probably drop more videos in the future on how to properly run a discovery on a high ticket sales call. But now that we've covered the basics, let's go ahead and move on to step 3. All right, guys, now step number 3 of the high ticket sales process is simple, and this is called the transition. Now, this right here is one of the biggest mistakes high ticket sales reps make when they're trying to close deals. You see, a lot of closers will get really good at discovery and they start to build more confidence there. But the transition is the moment and the step between the time when you are running discovery and when you're making your pitch, okay, which is where you're presenting your product and things like that to your prospect. But the problem is if you go straight from discovery where you're just asking questions and probing on the prospect's current situation, desired situation, and then all of a sudden you just immediately go into pitch mode with no pre-context or anything like that, it confuses the prospect and they kind of get a little bit overwhelmed. So what you want to do in order to set yourself up for a really good pitch on your sales calls is you're going to want to properly transition. And what this looks like is simple. Number 1, you're going to want to let the prospect know that you appreciate everything they just shared with. Number 2, you're going to want to let them know that you do believe without a doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you can help them and your product is the right fit. And if you have done a good job in discovery, the prospect will believe you because they know that you went very thorough into their situation and you have full context on where they're at in the current moment. And then the last thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to ask for permission to pitch. This is super important because if you just go right out and start pitching your product, it feels forced, it triggers sales resistance, and ultimately makes the prospect shut down. But by asking your prospect if it would be helpful for you to walk them through your solution, you get a micro commitment that gives you momentum going into the pitch. The transition is one of the simplest parts of a high ticket sales call, but a lot of sales reps tend to butcher this. So if you get great at transitions, your pitches are going to be way more natural and you're going to close a lot more deals. And now that we've covered step 3, let's move on to one of our last steps, which is going to be step 4. Now, step 4 is going to be the pitch. And there's a lot that we could go into here. This one as well could get its own video on its own. But let me give you some basics when it comes to pitching and some of the biggest mistakes I see most closers make. So number 1, when it comes to mistakes, is technical overload. You see, the way I like to describe this to sales reps is simple. I have recently been learning how to run paid ads. And if I were to come out and say to someone like yourself, who's probably never experimented or been inside of the Facebook ads manager or anything like that, hey, I want you to set up a CBO campaign with 3 ad sets, 15 creatives in each one, use dynamic creative, make sure and turn the audience network placement off. You're probably lost. You're probably like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? But that's exactly what you sound like to your prospects when you're pitching them your real estate program or your business coaching program. And you're throwing out a lot of buzzwords, but they don't understand exactly what you mean. Clarity is key in the pitch. If you confuse the prospect, you lose. Remember this, a confused mind does nothing. So your pitch should be focused on being concise with your words and being very clear in the way you explain how you're going to help the prospect have the transformation that they're after. A simple technique that will help you do this is as follows. It's called a 3-pillar pitch. You see, there's been multiple studies on the brain and how we think as human beings. And one of the biggest studies when it comes to presentations and presenting things to other people is that people think in 3s. They have a lot better time thinking in 3s than if you just throw a bunch of information out. So most coaching programs and high ticket coaching packages in 2026 consist of different things, mainly coaching calls, course content, and a community access. So the way I always love to pitch high ticket sales offers is by breaking those 3 deliverables into their own pillars. This allows me to clearly explain to the prospect how we're going to go about delivering the transformation and makes it way more simple and digestible for them to understand. I always like to start my pitches off as well by letting them know exactly what the overarching outcome is going to be. So for example, after I leave my transition, I might go into the pitch with the prospect and say something like this. So Mr. Prospect, when you join our program, the goal is simple. It's to take you from A to B. So you can fill in the blank with the benefit of buying your program. And then you proceed to pitch, right? And then you walk them through the 3 pillars. And if you do that correctly, your pitches are night and day different. No longer will you be confusing the prospect and giving them 1,000 different buzzwords, and then they're getting confused and a little bit paralyzed and not following up with tons of questions that just drag on the sale. Pitches will be concise, words will be clear, and you can move on to step 5. All right, now we are officially on to step 5 of the high ticket sales process. And this is the moment you've probably been waiting for. You see, step 5 is simple. It is the close. Now, there's a couple things you're going to accomplish during step 5 of a high ticket sales process. And one of them is actually a mistake you're probably making on your sales calls right now that's costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars. See, one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of closers make is when they leave step 4 of the high ticket sales call and they get done pitching their product, they will immediately go right into what's called the price drop, where they tell the prospect how much their program costs. And then, of course, the bell rings and out come the objections. The prospect starts giving you all their fears, concerns, and excuses for why they can't sign up today, and you're stuck fighting an uphill battle trying to get them committed to buy your program. All of that can be prevented by doing one thing, and that is this. Prior to going into your price drop and after you've made your full pitch, you're going to want to use what's called a tie down. So you're going to want to ask the prospect after you've pitched the program, number 1, what questions do you have for me? And you're going to want to pull out any potential questions they have about your program. The second thing you're going to want to do is do a tie up. So before we talk about the investment, let me ask you a question. Do you feel like this program is the answer for you? Yes or no? And you're going to want to not proceed with the sales call and go into the close until you are certain that this prospect is sold on the program and the learning path it's selling. That is number 1, because here's the thing. If the prospect is anything less than 100% sold that your program is the answer for them, all other objections are irrelevant. You're wasting your time trying to overcome the excuse of talking to their wife, wait until next week, pulling the money together, or whatever other BS they throw at you. The first and most important commitment you need to get before you drop the price is, do they actually feel like your program is the answer? Now, once you get that, you're ready to move into the close, and that is very simple. You're going to want to just do a couple things. things. Number one, you're going to walk them through next steps, and then you're going to do what's called the price drop. So I always like to give next steps to prospects so it's clear right after they pay exactly what's going to happen. And it might go something like this. Okay, Mr. Prospects, that wraps up the program and exactly how it works. Now, before I walk you through the investment, let me tell you exactly what next steps would look like. So after we get the investment taken care of, I'll go ahead and connect you with our head of customer service, XYZ, and they'll set up an onboarding call with you, give you access to all the materials, and we'll get your journey started so you can be on your way to achieving the desired outcome. Does that sound good? And I'll walk them through those next steps. That way there's no confusion after they say yes as to what's going to happen next, okay? And then the last thing I'm going to do, of course, is price drop. So for everything we talked about here, getting access to the X, the Y, the Z for the next 12 months so you can experience benefit, the cost is just going to be drop your price, okay? Now, at this point, the call is going to go one of two ways. Either you're going to get told yes, you're going to go ahead and collect the cash and make the money and get the prospect the help they need, or you're going to get told no, which is where the objections come in. And we'll definitely be covering that in a future video, but that is step 5 of the process. All right, guys, so that summarizes my 5-step process. Now, I've just walked you through this as a brief overview. Obviously, I wasn't able to go too far in depth on each one of the steps. I definitely will in a future video, but just remember this as we wrap up. I always tell everybody I work with inside of my program, High Ticket Dominance, that you don't practice till you get it right. You practice till you can't get it wrong. You see, my process is optimized for one thing, and that's simplicity. The reason that it works so well is because it's not overcomplicated. It's not that hard to learn. It just takes reps and a commitment to master. So take all the 5 steps that I just gave you, apply these to your high ticket sales calls. You're gonna make more money. And by the way, if you're a sales rep and you've been looking at getting into high ticket sales and you would like my personal help getting into the industry, learning the skills and getting placed into the right opportunity, I want you to click the link below because I've been running my academy, High Ticket Dominance, for a while now. And we've helped dozens of sales reps make the transition, and we want to help you too. So if that sounds interesting to you, click the link in the bio. If not, give the video a like, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.